Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Canada's pledged another $500 million in military aid to Ukraine. Prime Minister Trudeau made the announcement during the NATO summit in Washington. Ottawa's also committed to another $48 billion that will be put towards child welfare reform in our Indigenous communities. And the Alberta government announced more funding help for our beef producers. We will explain what the close to $2 million will be going towards.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pledged another $500 million in military aid to Ukraine. He made the announcement after meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. Zelensky thanked Canada for its support following more Russian missile attacks earlier this week.
We're also stepping up over the coming year on the training of fighter jet pilots to be able to take on Russia in the skies over Ukraine. We're going to continue to be there step by step, not just supporting you directly, but making sure everyone across the NATO alliance remains as steadfast as we are in support for you and for Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you.
Happy to see you. Thank you, first of all, for your warm words from you, your team, and of course, people of Canada, your condolences. So thank you so much. It's very important for all our people to hear it, and thank you for your help. And additional military aid, $500 million, a huge support. Thank you so much. I think it's very important to strengthen our heroic guys on the front line. Thanks for everything.
Now, while in Washington, Trudeau also says that Canada will hit the NATO defense spending target of 2% by the year 2032. Canada's current spending is at 1.37%, which is expected to rise to 1.76% by the end of the decade. Ottawa's announced $47 million in funding for research groups that aim to collect and study data on our country's healthcare workforce. Doctors and nurses have been calling on the Trudeau government to tally and research the number of healthcare workers. An arm of the Canadian Institute for Health Information is getting around $22 million to figure out where the gaps are in the workforce. The Medical Council of Canada will receive $13 million to expand a national physician database for doctors. The head of the Assembly of First Nations received cheers as she confirmed the group finalized a deal with Ottawa to receive $47.8 billion over the next 10 years that will be put towards child welfare reform. National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak made the announcement on the floor of the annual General Assembly in Montreal.
This is significantly above and beyond Canada's initial commitment of $19.8 billion that was committed several years ago. The funding will lead to improved supports for First Nations children and their families through fundamental reforms to the program. This agreement is on top of the more than $23 billion for compensation. I know that compensation is done out the door. We're thankful for that. That was approved last October in the final settlement agreement to compensate hundreds and thousands of First Nations individuals and their parents or caregiving grandparents who were harmed by Canada's discriminatory policies through the First Nations Child and Family Services Program and narrow application of Jordan's Principle.
Chief Woodhouse-Nepanak also says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will deliver an apology in the House of Commons for discriminating against First Nations children through underfunding on reserve services. For the first time ever, Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre did an in-person address to the Assembly of First Nations. He says the federal government needs to cut waste and put more power in the hands of local leaders, including those in Canada's Indigenous communities.
There's so much untapped potential in this country. So much of that potential resides in your nations and communities. For too long, you've been held back by a broken system that takes power away from you and places it in the hands of politicians and bureaucrats in Ottawa. That's why I'm committed to ending the Ottawa knows best paternalistic system. As you know, the Indian Act puts reserve land and money in the hands of the federal government, which means you often have to go to Ottawa to ask for tax revenues collected from resource development on your very own lands. No other government has to do that. The result is that money is wasted on paperwork and there's less left over for the good projects that you seek to advance in your own communities. My goal is to reduce the bureaucracy and simplify the funding for your nations.
A Winnipeg man has been convicted of first-degree murder in the killings of 4 Indigenous women. A Manitoba judge found Jeremy Skibitsky guilty on all counts and handed down a verdict that carries an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. Skibitsky previously admitted to the 2022 killings of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified person simply known as Buffalo Woman. The Alberta government announced that it is expanding its food safety and certification program. Officials say this will help to support our beef producers. They say back in 2023, beef was our province's largest agri-food export at $3.9 billion. The province will be providing Alberta beef producers with close to $1.9 million for its on-farm food safety program through the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership.
They're going to have new outreach efforts that will see Alberta beef producers working with industry partners like agricultural societies and ag fieldmen to organize at least 30 community events over the next 4 years. They're going to have new education activities for 4-H Alberta that will help prepare the next generation of farmers and ranchers to produce and implement industry best practices into their farming operations. And I'm thrilled that these grants will fund targeted engagement with our Indigenous partners as well here in the province of Alberta.
Alberta wildfire officials say a state of local emergency has been declared at the Little Red River Cree Nation. Close to 1,000 residents have been evacuated from Garden River. The blaze, which is over 41,000 hectares in size, has a number of firefighters, heavy equipment, and helicopters battling it. Fire officials say since January the 1st, there have been 692 wildfires recorded in the forest protection area that have burned over 184,000 hectares. The Lethbridge Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee rejected an update to the municipal housing strategy on Thursday. The strategy that was initially created back in 2019 aimed to present renewed and relevant housing outcomes and address current housing challenges here in our city. The vote ended in a 4-4 tie in committee, which automatically rejected the motion. A reason given for rejection included concerns of the legitimacy of the engagement process with housing stakeholders.
I'm not comfortable with the engagement process that we're utilizing. I'm not criticizing the folks that are using it. I'm just not satisfied that it actually does what we think it's doing.
Matthew Pitcher, the Housing Solutions Coordinator who proposed the update, warns that rejection may result in disengagement from community members. Lethbridge police are reminding drivers to slow down and drive responsibly after officers responded to another motorcycle crash on Tuesday. Police responded to a call around 1 in the afternoon of a 39-year-old man riding a motorbike who was heading westbound on Highway 3 when he collided with an eastbound Honda Civic that proceeded to turn north onto 30th Street. The biker was transported to Chinook Regional Hospital and is currently listed in stable condition. The investigation into the crash is ongoing. The City of Lethbridge will be hosting their annual Street Wheelers event beginning on Friday. It features a wide variety of classic cars all throughout southern Alberta. A controlled cruise is scheduled for Friday night along 3rd Avenue from downtown to Mayor McGrath. The city has issued multiple road closures that night, starting at 6:30 p.m. and running until midnight. Police are asking drivers and spectators to be sure they follow all of the rules of the road this weekend.
We need to remind the citizens and obviously the road users that they do have an obligation, and we will be strictly enforcing traffic laws to make sure they're making it as safe as possible. And if they are conducting illegal activity on public or private property, for example, spinning their tires or a smoke show, they will be dealt with accordingly.
And if you like racing, this weekend we'll also present a 100-foot dash at Exhibition Grounds on Saturday and the famous Show and Shine at Galt Gardens featuring lots of Camaros, Mustangs, and Mopars will take place on Sunday. Well, the heat warning from Environment Canada continued for our city today. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, that upper ridge from California bringing the heat should remain with us for quite a while.
Well, what we're seeing now is that temperatures will become more moderate for much of Alberta by Friday, with the exception of some regions in southern Alberta still seeing warm temperatures through the weekend, including us here in Lethbridge. So we're going to be seeing a drop from 35 degrees today down to 27 tomorrow, which is still much higher than the average high for this time of year. So seasonal highs right now in Lethbridge, 25 degrees. This much higher. As we get into the weekend, we're going to be seeing those temperatures rise back into the low 30s and even into next week. So looks like we are not out of the clear yet as far as this heat wave is. So continue to monitor for signs of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, drink plenty of water, and try to reschedule those activities to more indoor activities for now. And I'll be back later in the show to give you that full 7-day update. Hal?
Thanks so much, Jeanette. You know, during this ongoing heat wave, the City of Lethbridge is making a number of resources available to help residents keep cool. There are public water stations available at Nicholas Sharon, Legacy, and Henderson Lake Parks. They're also available in Galt Gardens downtown. Local pools are open and spray parks have extended hours from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. And city facilities like the Lethbridge Public Library branches, the Park and Ride, and the Cavendish Centre are also open into the evening for those seeking a reprieve from the heat. You know, dealing with the heat can be a real challenge for most people, but imagine not having access to water or a place to cool down. Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge says this is a situation facing the unhoused population, and with near record temperatures, there's a real danger of dehydration and heat exhaustion for those who spend a lot of time outdoors. The mission's Chief Development Officer, Jennifer Lepko, says they're actively seeking out those who may need the help.
It's really important that we, as a community, look after those people that don't have, and we make sure that they have lots of water. You know, try and get them into cooled areas. So here at Streets Alive, we try and get them into the building, come in and cool down, give them some water, maybe some juice to get those sugars up, but really just looking out for them, doing wellness checks and checking on them as a whole. And so our outreach teams are definitely looking in all the nooks and crannies for the individuals because, you know, with this type of heat, they get set up somewhere against a hot wall or something, and it can happen really quickly where the heat exhaustion does set in.
Lepko says one of the best ways to support organizations like Streets Alive during a heat wave is by contributing to a water drive, which is currently underway. The Interfaith Food Bank and Lethbridge Food Banks are collecting donations of cash or water and then distributing them to community groups, which then give to those in need. You know, many Canadians are battling cancer, including multiple myeloma, which affects the blood. There are various treatments, but unfortunately, no cure is available just yet. Brian Treadwell is a local journalist and leader of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. He recently shared a bit about his own journey with the affliction.
I have to give credit to my family physician. He was tired of seeing me complaining about always being tired. So he finally said, I've got to send you to Dr. Benke. And my hematologist sent me up to Calgary with a battery of tests. And I went back to see him for the diagnosis. And he came in and sat down beside me and took a deep breath and said, you have multiple myeloma. So I just went, okay. So what do we do next?
You can hear more about Brian Treadwell's journey battling multiple myeloma in an interview with BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our broadcast. A new initiative for kids is taking place Monday through Thursday from 9 till noon at Nicholas Sharon Arena on the west side. It's called the Lethbridge Summer Sport Drop-In Program. Alex Engel is with the Lethbridge Sport Council and says the drop-in will continue until the end of July. He also says equipment will be provided for some fun activities and explains what their goal is.
The program's meant to help introduce free play, inclusive play with sport for individuals who maybe don't always get the opportunities that others get to, with breaking down financial barriers and stuff like that. It gives a space that's safe for kids to come out, that they can try new things. So we have anything from hockey to football to baseball to pickleball, all sorts of different sports here that kids are allowed to come and try out and meet new friends and try new things and learn a little more about themselves as well while they're doing it. We've had kids anywhere from 3 years old to 15 years old here so far, but ultimately it's a community-based thing, so anybody is more than welcome. So you don't need to worry about registration. We're here, we're running. You can just come show up and we'd be more than happy to hang out with you.
You know, I have to try that pickleball. Looks like a lot of fun. By the way, so far this summer, the event has been bringing in between 80 and 90 kids who are participating. Engel says the program received $7,200 in funding support from Canadian Tire's Jumpstart program and Participation. You know, recent studies show that pornography is not just a problem for men, but for women as well. Dr. Joyce Skarka, co-author of the book Her Freedom Journey, A Guide Out of Porn and Shame to Authentic Intimacy, shares how porn websites are seeing women as a new target audience.
People are always shocked. Oh, women struggle with this? Really? I thought this was a men's issue. And so, yes, actually, one of the largest porn sites, they release their data every year, their statistics, their viewers, and they said that 36% of viewers in the last year, 2023, were women, and that's globally. And that over the last 10, 15 years, every year increases. So we know that they are targeting women. They are creating porn specifically to women, marketing to us, and trying to capture us. And so, yes, it's growing exponentially.
Make sure you catch my full informative interview with Dr. Joyce Skarka, co-author of the book Her Freedom Journey, who gives valuable advice on ways to overcome pornography addictions, coming up later in our program. Well, the heat warning continued for much of southwestern Alberta again today. Make sure you remain nice and hydrated since the hot temperatures will be sticking around. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. The heat warning from Environment Canada continues for Lethbridge, as we've seen temperatures well above 30 degrees. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, I guess we should expect some hot temperatures. It is July after all.
Yeah, well, I know I for sure am not complaining, hell, because it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were complaining about the cold. Okay, so what we're seeing for most of Alberta coming in the next few days is those temperatures should moderate to more seasonal. Not for us so much here. We're looking at a drop from 35 to 27 tomorrow. By the way, it looks like we tied our heat record for today, which was set back in 2002. It was 35, that was the record. Looks like we reached that today. Tomorrow, high of 27, which is still much higher than seasonal, of 25, back to 30s for the weekend. High of 30 degree on Saturday, up to 33 on Sunday, 27 Monday, and then back to 31 and 33 on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So we're still definitely in that heat wave. Average high for this time of year, 25. Average low, 10 degrees, 35. Like I said, that was our record back in 2002 is when that was set. Looks like we tied that today. And then in 1997, we hit the low record, which was only 3 degrees. That's hard to believe for July. Okay, it looks like the sun rose this morning at 5:37, sunset this evening at 9:36 p.m. So guess what that means? That means we are now looking at 15 hours, 59 minutes of daylight, 2 minutes shorter than we saw yesterday. That's right, I said it. I said shorter. That means winter's coming. I hate to say it. Okay, it was a fairly clear skies. Tomorrow is what we're seeing on the west coast. Tomorrow, Victoria high of 24, looking like a little bit cooler with onshore winds in Victoria. Vancouver 23, but more like 28 as we go further inland. Lots of clear skies there as well. Alberta remaining under the heat wave today, but tomorrow temperatures start to moderate as we see there in Edmonton and Calgary with highs of 26 and 25 with clear skies. As we get into Saskatchewan, that heat wave continued today and the humidity was also very much a factor. Tomorrow things start to get a little bit cooler there. Looking at early morning showers in Saskatoon with a risk of a thunderstorm, 27 for a high, 29. The high tomorrow in Regina, same thing. Slight chance of showers, risk of thunderstorm. 32 in Winnipeg and a humidex value of 40 degrees with clear skies. So going to be a very, very hot one in Winnipeg tomorrow. As for the rest of the country here, it looks like we are seeing some rain in certain areas. Clear skies though in Toronto, 28 degrees, 28 in Ottawa, 26 in Montreal. Montreal could see that chance of showers as well. As we get into Atlantic Canada, here's where we are seeing a lot more precipitation. So we are seeing 27 for a high in Fredericton, could see some thunderstorms there. Halifax seeing a slight chance of showers, 26 for a high. Showers expected in Charlottetown tomorrow, 26 for a high there. And 18 degrees in St. John's with a mix of sun and cloud. There you have it. That is your forecast.
Costco bargain hunters are going to have to pay an extra $5 to $10 a year to be a member. The popular warehouse chain is preparing to raise its membership fees for the first time in 7 years in both Canada and the United States. The Washington state-based company disclosed the forthcoming 8% increase in the fee to gain entry into its more than 700 warehouses as part of a monthly sales report. The new fees, set to take effect in September the 1st, will boost the price of Costco's basic Gold Star membership to $65 a year, and the premium executive membership will rise to $130 a year. Royal Bank has announced major changes to its executive suite in the aftermath of its acquisition of HSBC Bank Canada. The bank says its personal and commercial banking division will also be split into two groups. It says the modifications will put the bank in a better position to take advantage of its scale while speeding up decision-making. All changes will go into effect on September the 1st. A new report says the Bank of Canada's quarter-point cut to its key lending rate did not prompt the expected rush in home buying. The latest Royal LePage housing pricing survey reviewed market trends across Canada during the second quarter, noting that demand continued to outpace supply in both the Prairies and in Quebec. Vancouver and Toronto, however, saw slower than usual activity this spring. The national aggregate home price rose 1.9% year over year to $824,300 in Q2. That's an increase of 1.5% from the first quarter. PepsiCo's profits jumped 12% to $3 billion US in the second quarter, but company officials say consumer purchases slowed down after years of price hikes. While earnings edged up, company officials say customers are not buying as many snacks and drinks after 2 years of price increases. It says North American demand for its Frito-Lay products was subdued during the quarter as customers became more value conscious. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 193 points on the day to finish at 22,544. The Dow was up 32 points to 39,753. The S&P 500 was down 49 to 5584, and the Nasdaq was down 364 points to finish at 18,283. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 83 cents to 82.93 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 5 cents to 2.27 US. Gold was up 52.78 to 24.2430 US an ounce, and silver was up 43 cents to 31.45 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.75 per bushel, barley is at $5.83, canola is at $14.06, and corn is at $7.11 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was unchanged at $182.25. Feeder cattle August contract was up $1.80 to $256.15. Lean hogs were up 10 cents to 88.55, and the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.40 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the head of the Assembly of First Nations received cheers as she confirmed the group finalized a deal with Ottawa to receive $47.8 billion over the next 10 years that will be put towards child welfare reform. National Chief Cindy Woodhouse and Ipanak made the announcement Thursday in Montreal. You know, many people struggle with pornography, including Christians. Dr. Joyce Skarka is a fellow believer who has struggled with porn and wrote a book about the subject. She says there's a way out for women, and we'll discuss how in great detail momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Street Wheelers Car Club in Lethbridge presents their annual Street Machine Weekend, taking place July 12th to the 14th. Make it a fun family event Friday night as all kinds of vintage classic, sport, and muscle cars and trucks cruise down 3rd Avenue South in Mayor-McGrath. Then on Saturday at the Exhibition Park Grandstand, enjoy the loud, raw power of these vehicles as they race for the fastest time in the grand tradition of drag racing. Then finish the weekend on Sunday with the ultimate show and shine showcase taking place in downtown Lethbridge at Galt Gardens. So much to see and do at Street Wheeler Street Machine Weekend. Discover homegrown produce and homemade products at the downtown Farmers Market at Festival Square in Lethbridge. Every Wednesday until September, beginning at 9 a.m., you'll find many local vendors selling fresh fruit and vegetables, delicious baked goods, homemade soaps, and so much more. Enjoy the relaxing atmosphere and support local producers and artisans at the same time. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The use of pornography has become even more of an addiction and more common today as compared to previous generations. Recent stats say the number of women who are watching porn has been increasing, so not just the men. Today's guest is going to talk a bit about that. Dr. Joy Skarka joins us now from Bradenton, Florida. She's the Director of Discipleship for the ministry organization Authentic Intimacy and co-author of the book Her Freedom Journey, A Guide Out of Porn and Shame to Authentic Intimacy. Good to have you with us, Joy. Thanks for joining us here from Florida.
Thanks, Hal. So glad to be here.
Now, you personally had a bit of a struggle with pornography as well to help inspire the book. Tell us a bit about that.
I did, yes. So it kind of became my story and then my passion to help other women find freedom because I had so much trouble finding resources specifically for women. And so that added on a layer of shame as well. So, yes, it's my story and now my ministry.
Now, we know how much of an issue porn is for men. How has it become so much more of an issue for women these days? And let's talk about some of the statistics where you got your research from.
Yeah, so people are always shocked. Oh, women struggle with this? Really? I thought this was a men's issue. And so yes, actually one of the largest porn sites, they release their data every year, their statistics, their viewers, and they said that 36% of viewers in the last year, 2023, were women, and that's globally. And that over the last 10, 15 years, every year increases. So we know that they are targeting women. They are creating porn specifically to women, marketing to us, and trying to capture us. And so, yes, it's growing exponentially.
I guess they think it's almost like an untapped audience, an opportunity to make even more money then, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And they are reaching in and creating this specific porn. It's almost like a romance movie, but rated, think of it as just rated R. It's tapping into our desire to be fully known and fully loved. And women are just so lonely and seeking for that. And so this is a false substitute that isn't actually helping.
And I guess people are also feeling lonely and vulnerable as well, are susceptible to the porn.
Yeah, so some of the reasons women turn to porn, it could be that loneliness, any really negative emotion like anger, frustration, isolation, kind of guilt, shame. They get stuck in this cycle of going back to it, feeling more shame, and then they can't get out of it until they begin to break free from some of those deeper root issues.
Now, from a Christian perspective and even from a wholeness perspective, why is pornography so wrong, Joy?
I know some people say, well, I only look every once in a while. What's the big deal? But really, you are watching image bearers. So if we believe everyone's made in the image of God, you're watching image bearers of God do things online that were created for a covenant relationship in a marriage, so between a man and a woman. So if you're married, you're inviting someone else into the bedroom. And if you're single, you're not living out God's design for wholeness, sexual wholeness and integrity. And so there's that piece. There's also the piece ethically that, a lot of pornography is attached to sex trafficking, and there's some research done that the performers have to be high or drunk to get through filming all day. So there's that element. And then lastly, how there's so much of it that makes it about you. So it becomes selfish for you and your desires instead of the purpose of marriage and sex and marriage intimacy to draw you closer and unify you. It actually does the opposite of make it all about you and separate you from one another.
Yeah, wouldn't it also create some unrealistic expectations, especially when you're married? Like you say to your wife or your husband, why can't you look like that?
Oh, yeah, because it's fake. It's edited. It's photoshopped. It makes sex, it portrays it in a way that's not realistic. And so it does create a lot of expectations for someone single who then gets married. And it's kind of like a letdown, like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. And so in our ministry, Authentic Intimacy, we do a lot of work helping those couples re-understand what is God's design? How can we actually live this out and kind of get away from pornography?
So, Joy, in your opinion, how did society get to this point and this current state of sexual brokenness? What are some of the causes?
Well, there's a lot, right? It's more accessible. It's free. So back in the day, you had to go into a store, a building, right, and to buy it. Now it's everywhere. It's on your phones, and not even that. It's in what we see on a regular basis, like our social media, our movies. Everything is more X-rated, I guess you could say, than it used to be. And even you'd be so shocked, the average age of first exposure is 7 to 11 years old. Some research says 7, some says 11. And so you have some people who could have been watching this stuff for decades, and it's impacting your body, it's impacting your brain. And so they just think, oh, this is normal, this is okay. One research study actually said Gen Zs thought recycling, not recycling, was worse than watching pornography morally. Like, you should recycle is more important than pornography. So we don't have this understanding of what God's design actually says.
Should we also maybe look at what Hollywood has been putting out, maybe even advertising agencies with some of their clients when it comes to soft porn? Maybe that is becomes a launching pad?
Right. I mean, they say what sex sells is the slogan, and we see that really impacting people. And so for women, especially a little different than men, women are drawn to erotica, which is a type of soft porn, like you mentioned. And so if you look at like the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon, that has captured many Christian women and get them reading and now watching the films, and the films back on Netflix, I believe. And so, yeah, it really is capturing. And if you look at what it's doing, it's reaching into our desire to be fully known and fully loved, which is how God created us. But He's the only one that can fill that void. Not porn, not erotica, not a movie. Only He can fill that void.
So, Joy, what are some of the common things that really keep a person stuck in porn instead of finding freedom through Christ?
Yeah, so definitely the shame piece, especially for women, that isolation, the fear of telling somebody, oh, what if somebody knew? They're going to judge me. They're not going to want to be my friend anymore, or I'm not going to get the help I need. So there's that element. And then there's the actual physical addictive element. So pornography changes your brain. It changes your neurological pathways so that every time you're triggered by a similar thing, your first thought is, oh, let me do this, let me watch this. And so they've actually compared some of the brains of people on drugs, on alcohol, and porn. There's a lot of similarities there because it's that rush of dopamine, that rush of chemicals in your brain that keeps you wanting to come back for harder and more variety, different types.
How about if a woman has an accountability partner, her BFF kind of steps up to the plate and says, hey, what you're going down this path is wrong?
Yeah, that's great. It's just, it doesn't happen very often that a woman easily finds a friend who is willing to talk about it or even knows how to talk about it. That's one of the reasons why Julie, my co-author, and I created our book, Her Freedom Journey, because it's a tool for a friend, a discipler, a women's ministry leader, to be able to partner alongside with someone. Because since we don't talk about this a lot, people don't really know how to help someone who's struggling. So if there is a friend out there that's like, hey, I'm willing to help, that's a good friend.
Yeah, a true friend, you really says it as it is, right? Instead of tries to sugarcoat it, like bottom line, brass tacks, this is what you're going through right now. So why does trying harder typically not work, Joy? How does one really flee temptation in advance?
Yeah, so we actually have a chapter in the book called Stop Trying So Hard, because that's been the message in so many different spaces and different recovery fields of, oh, just stop looking at it. Or you might have heard of the phrasing, white knuckling your way out of it. But, the more you think about something, the more you might want to do it, like the elephant in the room. And so we actually encourage women, stop counting your days, stop trying on your own strength. And it's actually an act of surrender. Like, it's you open up your hands and you say, God, I can't do this on my own anymore. I need your help. I need my community's help. I need the help of others because I'm stuck. I feel helpless, hopeless, all these things. And so it's really an act of daily surrender and obedience and joining with others in community.
What are some other practical steps someone can take to really pursue that freedom?
Yeah, so the first step we encourage people is to bring it into the light. So the enemy, he thrives in the darkness. That's where you're believing all those lies. That's where you're stuck. And so by sharing it with a trusted friend or even a counselor, a biblical counselor that you're struggling, that's a great first step. And then after that, creating kind of like a toolbox of things you can turn to in the moment of triggers and temptations, kind of like practical applications, like calling a friend, going on a walk, and then setting up some accountability software on all your devices devices, which is really important if you have little ones because they can easily just access stuff without even trying on the internet today. So that's a very practical tool that all parents can start doing now, even if their kid has never seen porn.
So in your opinion, what are some of the lies that we believe about sexuality, and how do we really break free from them?
You know, there are so many. This could have been a whole nother book because there are just so many lies that sex is dirty, that even having sexual desire as a single person, you kind of are told repress until you're married, when in reality, God created us all as sexual beings. You don't become a sexual person the day you get married. That's called the light switch effect. It's a myth. And so that's some of them. And then even that some people believe that God doesn't care about their sexuality. They think because God is so holy that he couldn't be a part of sex, because we think of it sometimes as dirty. But the reality is he created it. He said it was good, and he didn't design for it to be shame-based. And so he wants you to live in wholeness and have a healthy view. So those are just a few of them, but really how we could go on and on.
Now, can you explain the real spiritual aspect of sex, Joy? You suggest that sexual urges are reminders of God's intention for intimacy and a sexual covenant, correct, between husband and wife?
Right. So this is a hard concept for many people to understand, but really our sexual desires and our longings point us back to God. And when I first heard that, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense, because we're just so used to kind of separating the spiritual and the physical element of it. But yes, like this is something God created, that longing, because he wants a personal, intimate relationship with us. And a marriage covenant, that is just a metaphor. It is just a glimpse of our relationship with him. And so we on earth just experience a tiny little snapshot at what he has created. And I know that's hard to wrap your mind around, but it's a beautiful thing when you think about it.
Now, you mentioned kids as young as 7 years of age have been introduced to pornography. That's just scary and shocking. What do parents really need to know about pornography to protect their kids?
I know, and I talk to parents all the time, and I tell them, if you're not talking to your kids, the world is. I mean, so for me, part of my story was I actually saw it as a fifth grader. A friend introduced me to pornography, just opened up the computer, there it was. And then later, as a college student, when I had all these questions about sex, I just started Googling them, and that led me back to pornography, and that's when it really became a problem in my life. And so that's what's happening to our kids. They're curious. They go enter in their questions, or even now they ask Alexa, what is sex? Like, people do that all the time. And so the kids are just so curious. They're innocent. And so you have to, as a parent, share it with them and answer their questions and be a safe place so that they're coming to you and not to the internet, not to their peers. And just realizing if you're not the one talking to them about sex, someone else is.
Joy, how does a daughter's relationship with her father really influence her need for love and acceptance, and maybe even her view of God?
It does impact it dramatically, but what I like to tell women is there's so much hope and healing that can take place. But for so many women, the way that they see God, so their view of God, is based off of their earthly father. So maybe if he was absent, maybe if he kind of was abusive emotionally or physically, or had very high expectations of them, wanting them to perform well as a kid. That's how they view God, and so they view him as a distant father and not a loving father. And so a lot of kind of my healing journey and the work that we do with our women is helping them to see who God actually is. Like, what are the lies you are believing? What is the image you're putting on God? Is it based on your earthly father? And helping them process through that really helps their healing journey.
So what are some of the qualities of a good earthly father?
Oh, I love that question. So someone who's present, someone who invests and spends time in them, cares, listens, asks good questions. It doesn't have to be a dad who has all the answers, right? None of us do, but one who's really present and active and loving in their life.
And let's say the daughter has issues with pornography and she wants to go to her mother. How should the mother really respond and support her daughter in that regard?
Yeah, so this is important for a mom or even a friend. If someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," the way your face says, are you responding with empathy or are you responding with shock? Like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said that." That has so much of an impact on the person who's struggling, whether they feel shame or whether they feel safe and love and can talk about it. So your facial expressions, even just saying, "Wow, thank you so much for coming forward and sharing that with me. That had to be so hard. Thank you." And then helping them find next steps. Like, even if you say, "Well, I'm not really sure how to help you right now, I'm going to find a way to help you." And our book, Her Freedom Journey, is such a great way. We've actually loved to have mothers and daughters go through it together. Now, it would be a great tool for mothers and daughters for discipleship, relationships, small groups. It has discussion questions built in, so perfect for that situation.
Dr. Joy Skarka is the co-author of Her Freedom Journey, a guide out of porn and shame to authentic intimacy. Joy, thanks so much for joining us today from Bradenton, Florida.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hal.
Today, we're going to learn more about this type of cancer and what kinds of treatments and supports are available. Our guest has battled myeloma himself and is the head of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. He joins us here in the windy city of Lethbridge. Brian Treadwell, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks, Nav. Thanks for inviting me to Bridge City News.
Great to have you on. So, Brian, can you explain to our viewers what myeloma is and how Canadians are battling this disease?
Okay, first of all, let's answer the second question first. Though classified as a rare disease, myeloma is the second most common form of blood cancer. In 2022, nearly 4,000 Canadians were diagnosed with myeloma, and currently 11 Canadians are diagnosed every day with the disease.
Wow.
Yeah. So as far as myeloma itself, and here's the medical part, and I don't want to get too medical on it, but it's a blood cancer associated with the abnormal behavior of uncontrolled growth of plasma cells. That's the white blood cell. Plasma cells are made in the spongy part of your bone, and they're an important part of your immune system because they produce the antibodies. Okay, and in myeloma, too many plasma cells are produced and they crowd out the good cells like red blood cells and platelets that our body needs to keep us healthy. And when you have numerous areas in your body affected by these growth, the disease is called multiple myeloma.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. And so what are the symptoms of myeloma then?
Okay, some of the common primary symptoms are bone pain, anemia, extreme fatigue, reoccurring infections, and kidney problems. However, anything unexplained should be referred to your doctor so he or she can refer you on to a hematologist. And those people are the ones that make the specific diagnosis.
And is there a known cure?
No, currently it's incurable. However, great strides are being made in increasing both the quality and quantity of survivability of diagnosed patients. A decade ago, the survivability was about 5 years, but now with research and new drugs and treatments, people are living 5, 10, 15, 20 years and longer past their initial diagnosis. So
Wow,
that's the good news.
that is some good news. And what kinds of treatments are available and which kinds of treatments seem to be having the most success?
Okay, because myeloma is, well, I call it a designer disease. It designs itself around you. Your medical team will decide what's the best treatment for you. It's all depending on your age and your other health factors. You may have a stem cell transplant or not. I had a stem cell transplant, and since I had a stem cell transplant, even the protocol has changed for treatment then. So treatment is always changing for the better because they find all sorts of new things, new ways of treating it. So it's an ongoing process. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be.
Well, I mean, so you're a myeloma survivor yourself. So can you just tell us what life with myeloma is like?
Well, as far as treatments go, what are having the most success? Well, stem cell transplants, CAR T therapies. Um, your doctor sort of gives you a designated treatment plan to put the cancer cells into remission, and that's the best possible way because it's incurable. The best place to get is to have it go into remission. And therapies evolve. Treatment works for a period of time that you're in remission, but then cancer, it's smart. It adjusts itself to those drugs and it says, okay, I'm used to it, so now I'm going to grow again. So then you become what they call relapsed. So the doctors have to go and find a new drug to go on and put you on. And you go on that for a while and go back into remission. And then the drug gets smart again, or the cancer gets smart again and says, okay, I like this. I'm going to grow again. So this dance goes on and on and on until you get back in and you run out of known drugs and you're put into what they call refractory because you're at the end of the line. So what happens then is your team has to look for drug trials, which aren't approved, by Health Canada. It's not a known, produced, but it's done at universities and specific things like that. So you hope to get on drug trials, and a lot of people are on them, and their survivability is increasing again. So it's an interesting dance. Here in Alberta, the University of Calgary has world class researchers, and they're coming up with some great new drugs. And I have one lady in our group that's been on there for about 5 years with a trial drug, and she was initially on palliative care, and she's gone to just blossoming on this trial drug.
Wow,
She's
amazing.
doing really well. So that's giving some great hope.
And going back to living with myeloma, in your experience, was there pain, discomfort?
Well, for me, yours truly, I have anemia, which gives low hemoglobin. So always being tired, and that's no fun. Of late, I've been dealing with having to go in for blood transfusions, and so it's an interesting dance. I had a stem cell transplant in 2021, and there's a whole battery of tests that lead up to going through that. And your doctor has to decide whether you're a good candidate for having a stem cell transplant. It's based on age and your health factors again. Now they're treating based on that whether you have a stem cell transplant or whether you don't, and your drugs that you take um, are adjusted specifically for that. So as far as day-to-day life, uh, there are good days, there's bad days, there's in-between days. So you just, as Christy Lane sang, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Now, do we know anything about what causes myeloma?
That's a good question. Everybody asks what causes it. We really don't know. We really don't know. Some say the environment, others say it could be pesticides. We're not really sure. No. The cure, that's what we're after.
Absolutely. Now, are there any ethnicities or age demographics who are more susceptible to getting myeloma?
Well, the median age for diagnosis is 65, though I've heard as young as 35. Primarily, it's 70s and 80s that get diagnosed. And there's more of a prevalence for Asian and Afro American heritage. So it can be anybody. Let's face it, it can be anybody.
And I want to go back to your experience when you were diagnosed with myeloma. What was your reaction, and how has your journey been battling this disease?
Well, it's funny. I have to give credit to my family physician. He was tired of seeing me complaining about always being tired. So he finally said, I've got to send you to Dr. Benke. And my hematologist set me up to Calgary with a battery of tests. And I went back to see him for the diagnosis. And he came in and sat down beside me and took a deep breath and said, you have multiple myeloma. So I just went, okay, so what do we do next? That's the thing. I wasn't no woes me, whatever.
It just didn't phase you. You were just like, okay, how do we tackle this? How do we get this?
Exactly. How do we get on with it and live life and adjust ourselves accordingly? I wasn't going to give up and throw in the towel or anything like that. Okay, go with the hand you're dealt.
Well, what a great attitude to have towards it as well. Now, you lead the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Can you share what a typical meeting might look like?
Have you ever seen a wrestling match? No, it's catch as catch can. We do a little bit of everything. There's no formal meeting because meetings get bogged down in red tape and all sorts of stuff. We sit around in a group when we can be outside because that's the best place to be. In the fact that myeloma, you're immunocompromised, so you don't want to pick up diseases from other people. In the winter months, yeah, Zoom is the preference, but we'll go to Timmy's and sit around and have coffees and things like that. But we'll go down to Henderson Park and sit around and share stories. The thing is, it's just being able to mix and mingle with people who share the same disease, and we all talk about how we react differently to the same drug. Because as I said, it's a designer disease. We all react differently to the same drug that we're given. The side effects affect us differently.
And to what degree does myeloma affect the way one lives their lives day to day? Like, are there certain things you need to avoid? Are there certain precautions you need to take? You talked about masking and being immunocompromised.
It's frustrating because at times you can't plan things. The way you adjust is the way it's individual. You'll hear a different story from each person that you talk to that has myeloma. Some are going on as if there's nothing wrong with them, and that's a great attitude, and that's good, So you just have to watch what you do. We're not skydiving because it involves your bones and things like that. Some of us don't ride bicycles or do things that will cause us, that will fall off, and hurt ourselves. Or, as I said, I'm not going in the wrestling ring, and we're not doing anything like that. Plans change. As I said, if you're not feeling good, it's okay to stay home. And when you're in doubt, talk to your doctor, talk to your medical team. They'll tell you what you should do or you shouldn't do, and talk to a dietitian if you need specific things you need to adjust for your diet, and things like that.
Now, this doesn't look like it affected you based on the way you responded to being diagnosed, but is it common for depression to set in, and what advice can you offer to help prevent this from happening?
Oh, yeah. I'm an old broadcaster, so I've got almost 40 years of faking it till I make it, okay? I can get behind the microphone and sound like I'm on top of the world. but behind and underneath, it's a completely different story. It's like a duck in the water. But you know, any life-changing thing like diagnosis like that, it's bound to change your psyche. I admit every now and then I have a little pity party, but you've got to keep a positive outlook. Absolutely, surround yourself with positive people. You know, read positive things, listen to positive music. Don't go on the internet. Oh, the internet, it's the bane of people with diseases because you get so much misinformation out there. And I'll say more about that in a moment. But the disease hasn't robbed me of my sense of humor. Maybe you haven't caught on to that, but Monty Python's, you know, always keep on the sunny side of life.
Life
You've ever
with
seen
Brian.
the video for that? Yeah.
And any final thoughts on winning the battle against myeloma, and any final thoughts in general? You were talking about misinformation.
Yeah. I always say to anybody I talk to, if you're going to go on the internet, go to Myeloma Canada's website, myeloma.ca. That's where you're going to find the most current information about myeloma. It's been rebranded and refreshed, and it's got the most current information, research, pamphlets, YouTube videos. It's just chock full of things. It has contact information. We have over 45 support group network groups across Canada. So whether you're in Sydney, Nova Scotia, or out in Tofino, BC, or up north, you're going to find groups in your province that you know, you can connect with, whether it be virtually on Zoom or, you know, in person, and get a hold of them. And any of the leaders will be happy to get a hold of you and talk to you on your level about where you are in your journey with myeloma, because they've been where you are. And that's the one good thing about it. We're not paid volunteers or anything like that. We're people who are living myeloma, just as you are living myeloma, if I'm talking to you as a myeloma patient.
Brian Treadwell is the leader of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.